space since I'm in two different places. Let's see. Does that work? Perfect. Okay. So we are here today to talk about help centers and knowledge management, and I'm very excited that we have a guest speaker who has just launched the co-leadership of the knowledge management user group. So I found this quote and I thought it was particularly apropos. Knowledge management is something many companies are sure they need if only they knew what it was. Right, Courtney?
Yes, absolutely.
Before we dive into the content, we do have a couple of Slido surveys. So if you want to pull out your phones and scan that barcode, or you can join at slido.com with the number there. And our first question, so that we can kind of give Courtney a little bit of information around the audience that she is speaking with. What is the state of your current help center? Are you in maintenance mode? So you're doing pretty good. You feel pretty good about it. Does it need refreshing? Does it need a total overhaul? Or is it non-existent at this point? Give everybody a few minutes to join in on that survey. I'm curious, especially around the state of AI, how many are in that total overhaul due or just needs a little bit of refreshing? Pretty evenly divided. Wow.
I didn't think it could get any better than that, right?
Needs refreshing. Okay. So apparently nobody here does not have a help center. So that's good. So we can skip over the basics of what a help center is. I think that this audience probably understands fully what Zendesk can provide in the help center space. All right, let's go ahead and go to our next survey, which is which teams create content in your organization? Is it the support team, the product team, knowledge management team dedicated to that, or some other function within your organization? And feel free to come off mute and share what other functions do manage content creation in your organization. Interesting. Support centered. Support is keeping the lead. Just a couple more minutes for you to get those responses in. Support is still maintaining that strong lead with 67% of you housing your content creation in the support team. Amazing. Okay, let's move on to our third one. This should create a word cloud. So in one word, how do you feel about AI in light of help centers and knowledge management? And you type in one word. This is in beta in Slido. I have not actually tried it yet. So excited. I'm excited too. I just got a email from our COO this morning saying, hey, Tiffany, it's time to talk about our AI strategy. So very excited. Hopeful? Definitely. A lot of work. Yeah, I feel you there. I'm grateful to have Courtney on my team to help share the burden. Learning, cautious. Cautious, I think, is how we were approaching it as well. Dubious. Of course, the more that use that same word, that makes that word bigger in the word cloud. So several of you are in the hopeful space, a couple in dubious, and then we've got the optimistic, skeptical, expectant, and learning. Trepidatious. It's a great Scrabble word. I love it. IDK. Yeah, definitely. All right, we've got one more still typing. We'll let that participant of the 15 who have responded. This is the word cloud that we have created. And it looks like somebody probably added to an existing word because I didn't see anyone pop up. So thank you all for participating in that and giving us a little bit of an insight into where you're coming from. Next, I would like to introduce Courtney Miller, who is the Director of Enterprise Learning at TogetherWork, which is the same company that I work with. And in addition to becoming a good friend of mine, I've really enjoyed the experience that Courtney and I have shared in divvying up the workload in Zendesk, with her owning help centers and helping our product lines create content and do things in the way that she's an expert on. She has 12 years of experience in learning and education, and she's our resident nerd, self-proclaimed, for all things training and documentation. Her main areas of focus in her current role are the Help Center and documentation best practices, process improvement for education workflows, instructional design, video creation, and of course, training and development. So she comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and exuberance and energy to take on a pretty big job here. Oops, I went too far. That's the next slide. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing actually and hand it over to Courtney. And I think what we were envisioning here is kind of a roundtable discussion. We'd love for you guys to come off mic or pop things in the chat. I have not been able to keep up with the chat as I was sharing my screen, but I'll hand it over to Courtney. Thank you so much for being with us today, Courtney.
Thank you, Tiffany. And I do have a few slides as well. They are brief as just some good bouncing off points for us if we want to talk about that. Just kind of some overview of some of the things that I especially leverage in Zendesk with a multi-brand instance like this, some of the lessons I've learned and all that good stuff. So, but it's like 3 or 4 slides, so we're not going to be getting too crazy in terms of that. So. I love how when you share your screen and it's the same one as that you're presenting on, you get that like lovely trippy effect. So I had an intro slide, but Tiffany introduced me so well already. I'm just going to move on to talk about some of the Zendesk features that we leverage a lot in our multi-brand instance when we talk about the knowledge management side. And I wanted to highlight content blocks, labels, and the related to fields, because those are things that everyone has, right? And we've kind of found some creative ways to use them, and especially ways to think about them in an enterprise area with multiple brands. So first, talking about content blocks, we actually leverage them. Their intended purpose, right, is to have information in one place that can easily be updated and therefore update in multiple articles. That's great if you have a single brand, but otherwise it can get a little challenging. So we actually use that also as a method for templates. So Enterprise Learning maintains templates for document types, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. And we use those and then unlink them so that they can bring in guidance. So that's a kind of an interesting way to leverage content blocks from an organizational standpoint or a multi-brand standpoint. The tip for that when you're talking about multi-brand is to utilize prefixes for easier identification. That way you can really narrow down what you're looking for. So for example, kind of my branding part of it is the Enterprise Learning Forum. Also referred to as the ELF, because it entertains me and I enjoy a good pun. So we have the ELF. And so all of our templates start with ELF and then the type of content we're looking at. For labels, something that I have found is a good guidance. First of all, Zendesk their help center has a lot of great articles, and that's where a lot of this best practice came from. But making sure that your brands know the best practice around labeling, things like not using 11 billion of them, or that will muddy your searching. Do not focus on word variation. So you don't want something like clothes or something like movies all together, right? You want to keep it simple. And then also focus on alternative terms. So if your users, for example, one of our products is association management software, they have memberships, but in the system, they're referred to as subscription items. So that's where we would utilize those alternative terms. Now, I will say labels, if you all haven't experienced yet, are kind of a Wild West situation, simply because there's not currently a good way to see who owns what and where those labels are used elsewhere. So that can get a little hairy with that. And that's the same with the related to that I'll talk about next, is I've seen that become a little interesting when we look at the list. So something that we leverage the related to fields for, it is obviously used for internal searching. It's a way of grouping content together, but we also use them as ways to provide additional information about articles. So it is something that is shared across brands. So we have pre-populated them with certain information, for example, audience, article content type, skill level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, those types of things. Those are ways that you can tag your articles. And that creates a whole new list view for your readers as they're looking at it. So that's something that we also leverage, is looking at what features are already existing and how can we best leverage them as a part of our system. So I'm going to start with that. I'm actually going to take a pause here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then move the presentation over so I can see any chats that come in. Just realize there's a slight flaw in having the user group on the same page. So we're good with that now, but let's see.
And I'm happy to share as chats come in now that I'm paying attention. Anybody have thoughts or comments as Courtney is presenting? Feel free to pop them in the chat if you are not wanting to come off mic.
Yeah,
on mic.
Absolutely. And I can see it over on, actually, it's fine over there. Okay. Far on the right. So when you see me, instead of looking straight at you all, I'm looking over to the side. I'm actually looking at you all in what you're writing. So it's very meta. So these are some of the things that we leverage in Zendesk from an enterprise level. Has anybody else utilized these, encountered them? Any comments or questions related to some of those fields within the Cassie asks, what do you all use labels for, and does it help with reporting? So leveraging labels is meant to hone your search results. So that's how that is a customer facing functionality. So we use that to make sure you can hone in and people can find the articles they're looking for. And there are some great articles in the Help Center about that, and I can provide some follow-up links as well to that. But that's where we utilize the labeling, is actually looking at it from that perspective of what are and we'll talk about, I've advanced the slide already, but the other big piece of help centers is really about how you architect and organize the information. That's where we get super nerdy and we start to fall asleep and stuff. But thinking about what is the information you're presenting and how is it best to be presented. So, and related to is very similar to the same as content tags. Yeah, that's how they're leveraging them, especially in Zendesk. It's not by default something that is visible, but in certain themes, and especially if you utilize custom themes, you can surface them. So we have it showing at the very top, and it's called article information. And actually, I'll have a screenshot to show at least part of that and how we've kind of set that up to leverage it. And then you can absolutely click on it and see the list view of the other items that have been tagged. Andre asked, for content blocks, do you use them for sections of an article, entire pages, or a mix of the two? We primarily use them for full article templates, which is how we are grouping the piece of content that you're looking at. So happy to show. I'll do a little show and tell absolutely of it. One of the big things that, so as we said, my background is in learning. Documentation became a part of my life very actively within the past 4 years, when the documentation team came under my purview. So I've learned a lot. And one of the big things I've learned is when you think of documentation, you have to break apart the elephant. One of the big things in training and learning all together is if you think about what people need or what they want 3 things. They want just something that is just enough, just in time, and just for me. And part of how you make that possible is by breaking apart your content into smaller and more digestible pieces, which also, as we have talked about, that also lines up perfectly with building out your content to match AI and everything. And so if you go down the rabbit hole, they'll have content that is, you start with your concept, right? Of what is this thing? How does this work in our system? What are we trying to sell? What the conceptual piece of it? And we'll have those at a higher level type of document. Then we have tasks, which are how do we do the thing, right? And so we'll have how-to documents for that. And then we also have reference types of templates that say, Okay, now you want to learn all about what these fields do in this system, right? And even within these three big kind of buckets, we have smaller pieces as well. So if we look at any of our document types, we have different templates for each and what their needs are. And so in our help center, what we have done is we have created templates for each of these. If you drop a content block with that template of, let's say, a functional area overview, that's going to give you guidance on here is the title for it. Here are the sections. Here's a description of what should be in that section, as well as an example for it. So this gives us a really great idea of saying, here's that information and how are we going to do it? I will actually go ahead and since this is such a fun thing to show and talk about, I do have it pulled up so that you can see if we are in our help center and you see it's very serious help center. This is one of the other things I'll mention is, especially if you're dealing in a multi-brand instance, this is what I could call my golden brand. The golden brand is populated as an example so that you can show your people what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because it's so easy to have this vision for here's how information should be organized and this is what we want to do and here's how you need to think about it. But to actually show them, we'll go on a whole sidebar about my cursors, but we're going to pretend it's so it draws attention to the learner for more ease of use during presentations of software. It's totally legit. But also it's a T-Rex. So when you come in to add an article, we've created all the different content blocks. And some of our brands use their own content blocks too. As you can see, they're using their acronyms. But any of our products have ELF in front of them. So if I look at ELF and see all of these different different template types, when you pull it in, and I'll use the example of a reference report is a great one, right? If we want to see a reference is going to be, here's your nitty gritty details about your content. So if you insert your content block, the next step is to unlink it. What that does is that has now dropped all the information into this article, but it is no longer connected to the content block. So any changes I make are not affecting anything anywhere else. And so from here, here is the title guidance. Having the title guidance allows them to say, okay, this is what it is, as well as giving them your learners a visual indicator of what type of information they will be getting when they come in here. Then here's the introduction. Anything in italics is kind of describing what you're looking at. And then an example of what information might be in here. Having that introduction is another one of those great features as a part of following that AI best practice in searching. We know that Zendesk looks at the title and the first 75 words in its searching. So making sure that we've included things like an introduction is a great place to start with that. And then here are your key features and examples. Here's your getting started. So this really helps walk them through it. And we even have, here's where you have to insert a table, but content blocks don't actually allow for tables. So here's a screenshot, but also a description of it. Good luck. So having this in here really makes it easy for someone, even if you're not a technical writer, if you are a support person that is coming in and having to kind of learn or navigate through these things, it's giving them what they need to do it well. So this is one of the things that we're really proud about, and a lot of people have really enjoyed it being a part of it. So any other questions about what we've done with content blocks so far? And I am glad you all are excited about it. Feel happy to share anything with any of this, open book for any additional questions or anything as well. While I'm here, I will go ahead and show that this is where we have that related to, you can see we include your article type, so it's easy to identify. We have your audience, we have skill level, and what that looks like in our golden brand. If we're looking at any type of article, for example, I think store record is one, for example. If I go to create a store, our articles include those details right here. right? So this helps you be able to see exactly what type of information it is. If I want to see all of my administrator related articles, I can do so. And this helps create good cross referencing as well. Also, those templates have been set up with the proper header so that innately we have some great table of contents type features available for navigation.
I think Dan's comment is on point. Why hasn't Zendesk made this concept a thing for templates? We'll
Right?
make sure that this recording gets in the right hands, and maybe that will be something that you can be the pioneer of, Courtney.
Well, it's so wild. I know I scratched my head at it for such a long time because you can use templates from support into knowledge. They have templates available that can be used, but it's not bi-directional. So if you're working in your knowledge base, this was the only way I figured out how to do it. So
If only there was a knowledge user group. Oh,
only,
imagine
that
that.
does seem swell, really. It's great. So these are some of the things that we have done in here with it, which I think has been, really successful. And definitely it's a challenge. One of the biggest hurdles is really being able to kind of think about information into these more broken down parts. But it follows a lot with kind of best practice in terms of looking at those big concepts as well as being able to get granular and not having to sift through information because you're looking at specifics.
Brock has a question before you go on about the buttons at the top of the article, labels
Yes.
in your golden brand.
Yes. So those are they actually using the related to functionality. So in the related to is where those different pieces are. Those are the only ones that can surface on the Help Center. The labels are actually behind the scenes just for search leveraging. So that the adding labels helps search results render. Related to is something that can be surfaced on the article itself and leveraged to pull connections. Great question. And so these are some of the other things that we utilize, right? When we talk about what are kind of some of the best things. I've already covered a handful of them. The in-article navigation is really handy to do. We've got article details. We also add manual related resources at the bottom because it helps people be able to navigate their way as well as utilizing the related resources in Zendesk. And we've also created some enhanced feedback where if somebody says yes or no to this, we give them extra questions. And if they submit answers to that, that comes in as a ticket that can actually be directly worked, which is really handy. Number one, because you're getting real-time feedback. Number two, because your support folks can track their time, as well as addressing the immediate pending questions that people have. And number three, it gives you a lot more contact with the documents because, a lot of times we make it, we forget about it, it starts gathering dust, right? And it looks like we have a question. So Krista asked, with multi-brand instance, does anyone have a workaround to maxing out the related to labels? I have not hit a max out yet. But I think part of that is going to be really deciding at the organizational level what criteria should be in there and then owning that piece. Because that's one of the nice parts is being able to see kind of, it's almost like if you build it, they will come, right? So if you have it pre-populated and you kind of evangelize why you're doing it and how, I think that helps with that some too. Stacy asks, is feedback global or can be managed by article? So this is per article. And actually, Tiffany can dig more into the actual, Tiffany and her team did the magic of setting up the actual workflows with it. But this comes in, it is on every individual article. If they yes or no it populates a ticket with which article it is, what they're submitting, and then the questions themselves under that, they have the options of saying like why it was helpful or not helpful. Either something's broken or the information's missing or whatever, and they have the ability to put in a comment. So, and then that is what comes back and can be worked. And Tiffany also has it set up so it can be brand based too.
If anybody has any questions on the nitty gritty details there, Kathleen Taylor on this call is the one who actually did all the work on setting that up. So if you want to connect with her or DM her, she can walk you through the very deep details on how that works.
Yes, from the help center perspective, what we had to do with it was add some code into the theme. And that was, we utilize Zen plates. So for us, it was dropping some code into the theme that generates this. And then once they hit the submit feedback is all the magic of Kathleen and Tiffany.
So is that basically generating a unique form, that like a ticket form there?
Yeah, so if I were to say like, I don't remember if I said it was helpful or not. So I'm gonna say the link is broken. This should work. This should work in real time. If I'm to come in and look at my views from here and see like, this is how you can tell how like how little I do. So first we also get an email saying, thank you for your feedback. But this provides us with the information. So what did they say, why, and the comment in it. And so then we could work the ticket from here. We also have it set so that it takes, it assigns this ticket ultimately to an internal user. That way your customers or your users or learners aren't like monitoring it or seeing it as like an open ticket. It becomes something that's internal for us to work as we have availability to do so. And we're actually working on enhancing how we close these tickets out as well. So it's more geared specifically toward documentation needs.
Yeah, and this was vital to our multi-brand instance. We've got 20 or so product lines in Zendesk, and being able to meet the need, whether they own their own content creation or whether Courtney's team is owning it, we can set up different triggers and automations to make sure that these are going to the right views and the right teams based on the brand that they're providing feedback or the articles within that brand.
Absolutely. And and part of it being global would be because you add the code into the theme for this, you could choose who uses it and everything. So like right now it's currently only in our golden brand, but we will be rolling it out to other brands as well over time. So those are some of the Help Center organization things that we have kind of talked through and learned about. And this is my second to last slide, is kind of the biggest lessons learned that I have when I'm talking and thinking about this in a multi-brand instance is number one, don't just show. That's why I have the golden brand, is so you can say, look how well organized this is. Look how easy it is to find information when we utilize these best practices. The second one I would say is create an infrastructure to ensure success, right? So have that data model, have your information architecture so that we can say, okay, at the category level in Zendesk, here's what we need to identify. At the section level, here's what we need to identify. And really have a lot of guidance around breaking apart this information. Because especially like if you think about it, if your support folks are the ones creating the information, they may or may not have documentation experience. They may or may not have technical writing experience. So a lot of times when you look in a help center, they are trying their best, but we need to help engage with them and help give them those guidance and help as best we can, which is also why providing templates, having things pre-populated really helps that success. And that's something that I think is very valuable. The third one I would say is define your use and share your vision, right? So as you think, as you see, I've had to do some unconventional things, which ties into number 4, right? Don't be afraid to get creative and reuse things as for your purposes as appropriate. But being able to say, here's where we need to get and how are we going to get here? And then share why that's important and what benefits it gives, I think is really important too. So taking that time to really think about that help center. And that can happen whether you're starting from scratch or if you're doing a revamp. One of the big things that I have projects wise is going to one of our brands and saying, let's look at the content you currently have and let's figure out where it fits into our new structure. So falling into that information architecture and actually moving content around to fit those. We currently have 2 happening right now, where we are taking their current articles, either putting them in the new templates, breaking them apart, rearranging them so that they fit into that content model, and rearranging them as we go. So we are actually trying 2 different methods. We're doing one in the brand while it's live. We're also doing one where we've stood up a secondary help center that we're going to switch all the routing over to when it goes live. So more to come on that. When we find the relative success of how that goes, we may be able to share some more information about that, the best way to do so, especially in a multi-brand instance. But those are kind of my 4 big takeaways from here. The last thing I will have before I show, first I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this in the chat as well, that as mentioned, we do have a knowledge managers user group now. We just had our first kickoff meeting at the beginning of the month. We will be having, as a part of that, show and tell. So anyone, Dan actually volunteered, I believe, to be our first guinea pig for that, to have show and tells of our different help centers and get examples around how other people are doing it and addressing it, as well as all kinds of other wonderful things. So that's my spiel and my pitch for the Knowledge Managers user group. I'm going to stop sharing and open the floor up to questions, comments, anything else we want to see talking about knowledge management and enterprise fun stuff.
Looks like BJ came off mute. Did you have a comment or?
No, sorry, I did that by accident.
Oh, well, it's good to hear from you anyway.
I have a question though. So I noticed when you were pulling up the templates that the articles are on, I guess, the longer side. We put together, I work with in a consulting capacity, and we had put together a bot, not with the AI at this point with Zendesk, but just like the intent-driven bot. And the guys that I work with were pretty adamant that like the really short, direct articles with like less information as possible is really important for that. I'm just curious to know, like we even broke out FAQs that had been within the article on the bottom. They were like, it's kind of better to just have it separated. Yep. We need some structure stuff to account for it on the knowledge base side. I'm just curious of like, has Zendesk put out any resources or considerations that we should know when we're writing articles so that they're going to best perform for these different AI elements? And if that's changed your approach to writing content too.
Great question. And I know Tiffany in Relate, they had a whole big discussion about that. And they have like a magic number of articles should be around 400 words, I believe, for that. And we agree entirely. The templates look long because it has twice as much information as would be in an article, right? Because not only are we providing guidance, but we're providing examples. But if we were to look at, for example, I'll go ahead and share my screen one more time. Clearly, I was too ahead of it. If we look at, this is one of our new instances. Ginger 2 is one of our new instances. If we look at a how-to article, for example, you're looking at just a few steps of how to do it, right? Or you're going much smaller in terms of if we were to look at like the functional area, a reference or a topic outline, for example, is you're looking at here's the information and here are the topics that will be links to it. So ultimately, the articles do end up much shorter. And Ginger is a great example of, they used to have all this information in one, and you can actually see how, oh, we're going to have to go real deep for a second into this. Let me see if I can find a good example of how the articles used to be. But in the new structure, we would break apart one article into 5 or 6 articles. So they do end up falling in line with some of that best practice for AI. It's being more succinct. It's having less content in it. It's making sure there's an introduction to align with that. And that also aligns with search engine optimization as well, too.
I definitely will give a shout out. The impactful session that Courtney's referring to that I attended at Relate was led by the AI user group leader, Eric. And we are, I'll just go ahead and throw this out there now, we're doing a panel discussion with the small business user group leader, Nick, and myself with Eric on June 6th. So we're coming together as kind of a massive user group leader event where Eric from Stylo is going to share best practices. And he was formerly a Zendesk employee. And I heard from multiple people that his presentation was spot on with what people are experiencing in how to approach content creation in an AI world. So that'll be June 6th. It's not the normal time for our user group meeting, but because we are coming together with the other user groups, it's a special event that we look forward to sharing. That should be on our user group page, so y'all can join an RSVP there directly, even though it is co-hosted by the AI user group.
And one of the examples that I'll show is just a very brief one of what happens before we break the content out. Is we actually outline the current articles and put them into the structure that they belong in it. And the only reason, besides this whole word soup of what you're seeing, is, for example, this topic for multimedia messaging, this used to be one article and now it's broken apart into 3. And you'll see that in a lot of what we do is looking at those articles and then turning them into more specific targeted articles. And so that is part of kind of that information architecture piece that you see as you go with it, for sure. Super fun. Makes your brain turn to mush if you stare at it too long. And Sarah asks, do you use a CCMS or do you draft articles outside of Zendesk before using one of the templates saved in content blocks? For the most part, so far, people are currently doing it within Zendesk itself. So like even in the migration project, what they do is they have both of the Zendesk instances pulled up and copy and paste over. Especially because the review process is using those like publication statuses and review statuses to help guide where they are in the life cycle, that they've been able to utilize it in there. I would say a CCMS really would come at the enterprise level. Well, I mean, if money grew on trees, right, I would love one. It depends on where your groups are working. If they have to work in multiple systems, then that's a CCMS becomes much more important. But if you're working in only one system, everybody across the board is in Zendesk, then I try to leverage the internal system to save duplication of work. And great observation, Maring, as well. If we could whisper in the ears of Zendesk, yes, some of that guidance would be handy for sure. What other questions, comments, anything else you all would like to discuss about knowledge management in Zendesk or in general? Yes, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, I don't mean to like take over. Going back to the slide that you had with the related to tags at the top of the article, and you have it broken down by audience.
Mm-hmm.
My question is like, if there is a large change, like kind of like oversweeping your product where you have to update the audience for each article, how do you then manage that if you're using a related to? Like, do you have to change that for each individual article?
Yes, so that would have
Okay.
to be you are tagging, those tags are happening at the individual level. But the actual related to items, let's say for example, you have an item that's audience customers and now you want to call it audience guests,
Mhm.
that you could change. You can go back and just edit that tag itself and it will
Okay.
change it across the board. So it depends on if you're modifying what's currently there or if you're having to go and like make something net new. We actually utilize, if there's going to be just in terms of like big project documentation stuff with our, we have some tech writers in-house that do this, is we have like a whole documentation project plan that we use, and part of that is identifying existing articles that need to change in addition to new articles that need to be created. And so if I were approaching it that way, that's where I would also include in that doc plan what other pieces are affected as a part of that article, tagging,
Mhm.
things like that. We also normally have a review cycle that's two-phased. So there is like in best practice land, like where people are really focused on it, is there's an accuracy review where we look to make sure the information's right. And that's usually with the help of product or a subject matter expert. And then we have a quality review where we're checking all of those little pieces. Is the formatting right? Do we have all our links working? Do we have our tags? Things like that would be kind of in that quality review phase, so that you also have a second set of eyes to make sure you're aligning with that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, we're doing a big project where we're changing our pricing and packaging, which is affecting all of our Help Center articles.
Yep.
And right now we're using images for banners that tells the reader what plan
Yeah.
the article applies to. So I was just looking for other ways to simplify that
Yeah.
process.
The other
So it
way
was
to
helpful. Thank you.
The other way to simplify that is using the content blocks for their intended purpose.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
So that is one where you could have, and I've seen actually like our Ginger, some of our other brands use that, where they have like, they'll call that content block SMS pricing. And
Mhm.
so they can drop in that pricing. And then if that changes or updates, they update it in the content block and all the articles are updated automatically. So that's another way to leverage it, is, like I said, using it as intended, in addition to
Yeah,
using it as as we get creative with it.
for sure. Thank you.
Mhm. Yep. And we've got agreement in the chat too, that that's what they use it for, is also for calling out products, roles, and permissions.
I will say, working alongside Courtney and watching her method, she's been attacking this for about a year and a half. Is that right? Has it been? She moved in from one of our product lines, as did I. We both came up out of product lines and were facing the challenge of working across different brands with different needs, different solutions, different levels of maturity. And I'll say that the call out that she made of being creative is one of the things that I am the most grateful for, having that collaboration, having somebody where we can kind of spitball back and forth on how do we get creative to make Zendesk do what we want, and how do we align to her level and deep experience with learning, and making sure that we do that in a way that we can roll out and standardize and make scalable as we continue to add other product lines. So I'd say that would be the number one thing I'd recommend. If you can go get yourself a Courtney, you're in business.
Have your thought part. Yeah. And it's, and as with all products, there will be things that like you will have a pet peeve about. And I certainly have some pet peeves with the Zendesk help centers, but have found that there are definitely ways to make it work, right? And the best ways to do it. And yeah, having that thought partnership, having that person, those people to just like, because Tiffany and I will shoot the breeze, trying to be like, okay, here's where we are. How do we get to that point? What is the use case? What is the real need? And then how can we work our way to make that happen? Because you definitely do get creative sometimes with it.
And I know Nick, my fearless co-leader, is a little under the weather today, but I do believe he's here. Did you have anything that you wanted to throw in as far as how Pinterest is working in the Help Center realm, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to include a little bit about what we're doing. So, we use a help center guide across, oh gosh, 20 teams, 25 teams right now. We have four distinctly implemented brands at the company, and we use it for internal employee support, so HR. We use it for help desk. We use it for external product support, and we use it for internal sales support, as well as a few other like minor, smaller team things that we do with it. I really enjoyed, Courtney, listening to how you standardize things or how you've built out your templates. I actually messaged my content manager and told her, hey, I know you can't make it today, but there's some really good things here that we should be doing. I learned a lot, and I'm actually looking forward to like picking apart this entire presentation about what we can use, because some of the challenges, as you mentioned, like there's little things here and there. Every product will have those little annoyances, but we do the best we can with the tools we have, as every company does. And I think there's a lot to glean from how you guys are doing it. So I'm very, very happy and excited to have my content team take a look at this presentation, because I am not an expert in content, regardless of what anyone seems to think or tell me. You are far more of an expert than I am.
Thank you so much for that.
Wow, that might be the first time that I've heard Nick say he learned something. He's usually our expert. He's the one I go to and say, hey, what do you know about this? Because he knows most of the things around Zendesk. So that is a huge win. That goes up for Red Letter Day.
Well, it has been a pleasure to talk about it. It's definitely, as Tiffany said, and as I am proud to say, definitely a nerd for knowledge, right? As we do. That's been, and I find with a lot of really fun stuff that can come from it. So helping get information to people makes everyone's life easier, especially our support folks. And that's one of the really nice parts that I always try to leverage, is making sure that the information is tied in with those support pieces, because, you know, as soon as you go to an external system, you're losing that synergy. So
looks like there is another comment in the chat to address. What are some considerations you make when choosing between using the content tags or content blocks as top-level indicators for products, roles, and permissions? With content tags relate to, do you have data for when people use it to review related topics?
Great questions. So, you know, for me, the primary way I'm using those content tags and those related to is identifying information about the article, because I think that learners and studies show yada yada, that looking at the top fold, really, to give them and know that that article is for them and it's the type of article they're looking for, is really important. So my main focus with those tags is actually those identifying features, your audience, your skill level, and your group, because especially, and that also addresses one of those little Zendesk challenges, the fact that you can't post articles in more than one place. It helps with that cross-referencing and that cross-tabbing. I utilize the content blocks for the templating. I think not a whole lot of our organizations use content blocks for other things. So it's helping share the best practice around that as well. But I would say if it's something that varies, it's something you want to maintain more often, and something that you need flexibility to go in multiple places, that's when I would utilize the content blocks. And then the related to content tags, I would use if we're looking for kind of a consistent, systematic labeling an organization and how you all identify it. You could expand it out to topic based as well. So you could add those tabs of like, here's your feature or here's your functionality. We don't do that with ours simply because we're already cross-referencing in multiple places. We have it in the labels as a part of it. And then the fact that we have related resources on the bottom of all of our articles gives that connection. And because of the way we organize our subsections, the breadcrumb is also going to include those content pieces to it. So we don't include that in our related to, and mostly stick on that content type, audience, skill level piece to it.
Awesome. Thank you for taking that a little deeper. I really do appreciate you coming today, Courtney, and sharing all of the exciting things that you're doing. Another thing I wanted to mention to the group is there have been discussions around how we can connect asynchronously when in between our virtual meetings. So we are definitely looking to see if there's some guidance from our Zendesk community engagement managers on where we should be doing that. I know there's a discussion for that being set up for the knowledge management user group, and I'm thinking we might need one for our enterprise user group so that we can continue to have these great discussions in between meetings. I also did talk to Zendesk this morning about potentially having our topic in July be around how to get the most out of your account team. So in the enterprise space, we all have dedicated account members that help us with our instance of Zendesk. And I've been curious what their thoughts are on how we utilize those resources. How do we get the most out of our relationship with our account team? So we'll be sharing more information about that, and customer success. Some leader from customer success at Zendesk will be joining us for that discussion in July. And then we'll be getting out the rest of the year's events up on our Bevy page. So feel free to join or look to contact us. By the way, you can contact us on that page, on the user group, enterprise user group page at the bottom. If you click on contact us, that will go to Nick and I so that we can reach out and continue that discussion. You can't really respond to the emails that come out sharing information, but you can click on that contact us to be in touch. So thank you all again for taking time out of your day. If anybody has any other comments, thoughts, feel free to share. Otherwise, we'll give you back 5 minutes in your day.
I think it's worth saying it out loud. I posted this in there, but just for communication stuff, I don't know who might know about the support driven community. It's a Slack community. It's for support people, so it's really helpful just in general. It's a really wonderful, happy place. But they do have a knowledge management channel there, and they do have a Zendesk channel as well, and some different Zendesk things. So that's an existing community if people are interested in that. And I'm sure we could talk to them about making the people who organize it are super into helping out in whatever way. So
Awesome.
I'm gonna throw it out there. If you just go to their website, you can request to join the Slack group, and they do webinars and stuff all the time too that are super helpful. I've only been into a few months now, but I love it. So
Amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you for
awesome.
sharing that. Definitely hunt that down. All right. Thanks again, Courtney. Hope you feel better, Nick, and everyone else have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Take care.